You Don't Know Squatch. I'm here with my co-host, Josh.
Hey, how's it going?
My name is Jim Myers, and we've got another great show today.
Another eyewitness.
This one, again, a little bit back in history, but wow, what a memory this guy has of that experience.
It's crazy. It's actually from the same time era, too.
As
same
one of
state.
Our previous guest. Yes.
Same time.
Yeah. So why don't we go ahead and go to the phone lines and hear from Mr. Terryll Monroe.
Your call will be answered in the order it was received.
We have another eyewitness account, this time from a fellow by the name of Terryll Monroe. And I met Terryll. We had not actually physically met, but he contacted us via our website and told a story that I found so fascinating. I thought we've got to get this on the show and get it recorded for you guys to listen to. So Terrell's with us. How you doing, Terryll?
I'm doing good.
Hey, thanks for joining us today.
You're welcome.
And we just want to hear your story. We may have a question or two just to clarify for our folks. But more than anything, we just want you to tell us what happened and when it happened, and we'll just let you take it from here.
So how long ago was your encounter?
It was back in 1978.
Okay.
In September.
And this was in, if I remember correctly, down in Canyon City, near Canyon City?
Yes, just north of Canyon City.
Okay.
Oh, wow. Our last guest actually is around that area, right?
Down, not too far from there, but...
And that was in 74.
That was in 74, yeah.
So I guess tell us a little bit about what happened.
Well, like I said, it was September of 78, and we were visiting friends of my grandparents. And are you familiar with the movie with Charles Bronson, White Buffalo?
I remember that vaguely. It's been a long time since I watched it. What was it about that movie that you're talking about?
Where the buffalo was filmed is this area where we saw it.
Okay.
Oh, cool.
Nice.
The place is called Red Canyon Park, which is up near Phantom Canyon, north of Canyon City. And I was about 13 at the time.
Okay.
And like I said, we were visiting friends. And Mr. and Mrs. Persinger, the friends of my grandparents, they had two daughters and a son, Yvonne, Gigi, and Billy. And we went down into this little meadow where there was a hay field and a cornfield. And we were just messing around on the haystacks. And
what time? Let me just ask you, what time of year was this? Summertime, I'm assuming?
I believe you said September.
Oh, September. Okay, sorry, I missed that.
Yeah, it was September. I remember the corn being really tall. It's almost harvest time.
Okay.
So we're on top of the haystack, me and Yvonne. Billy and Gigi were running around chasing each other. We're kids, that's
Sure.
what we do. And out of nowhere, there was this deep, guttural grunting. And it got our attention. But as being kids, we really didn't think a whole lot about it, I guess. So we continued to mess around on the haystacks. And it wasn't a few minutes later, a corn cob came flying out at us. And
a ripe one. So this is a heavy projectile.
Yeah.
And pointy to boot.
Yeah.
So
did it hit anybody?
No, it landed just a few feet from Yvonne and I.
Okay.
We were sitting up on top, and we looked at each other, and we saw the corn cob, and then we heard the grunting again, but it was louder, and it had, let's just say, authority. It was more like I'm going to try to do it, but it was like a sound.
Okay.
I'm already getting the goosebumps.
Amazing, this long after.
And Yvonne, she grabs my arm. And she says, "What's that?" And I look up, and I tell you, not 50 feet in front of us, this thing stood up. Now, like I said, it's September. The corn's probably just over 7 feet high, and it only came up to the bottom of its chest.
Wow.
That's really tall.
It was big. It's the biggest thing I've ever seen, and I feel lucky enough to have seen Andre the Giant in person. And this thing was bigger than him.
Wow.
And at that moment, Mr. Persinger was yelling down at us from the hilltop where the backyard was, telling us to get our butts back up there now. He had his 30-06 in his hand, which tells me he must have heard the first set of grunting and knew what it was.
Oh, so he was trying to get you away from it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Billy and Gigi started going back up the hill. Yvonne's climbing down the haystack. I turn around, and the creature's walking towards the trees to the west. And it stops for a few seconds, and it does that famous patty turn, and it's making eye contact right to me. And this is where it gets hard. I'm looking right at his face, and it just kind of woof, almost like it was telling me, "I'll leave you alone if you leave me alone." And I just kept staring at it. I was scared stiff, but I was so curious on what is this thing. It's not a bear. It's not a man. It's something like I have never seen in my life. And it just started walking off into the trees.
When you first saw, from the time you first saw it to the time you finally went back up to the house, did you feel endangered? Did you feel like, oh, this thing's going to come get us? Or
at first, I would say maybe. If it wanted to get us, it would have.
Yeah, because you were just kids.
Yeah, exactly. We were just kids. So I don't think it felt threatened. After I got up to the house, my emotions were just all mixed up.
Yeah.
I'm trying to analyze everything in my head. It's so hard. I can still picture the face.
Yeah, tell us about what he or she looked like.
I can honestly tell you that it looked nothing like Harry from the movie Harry and the Hendersons,
right?
Or the Jack Link Sasquatch,
right?
It wasn't like that. It was more like Patty. The face was dark. The nose was broad, not flat, but broad. The eyes were set apart. I don't remember if I could see any white in the eyes. The fur was auburn colored,
Okay.
a reddish brown. And I kind of took that as it was probably the reddish from the surrounding areas rolling around in the dirt and such.
Was it a male or a female, as you remember?
It was definitely a male.
Okay. Why do you say
Yeah,
that?
because I could see the upper chest.
Okay.
There were no breasts. It was just a massive, wide chest.
And just so, just to put the area in perspective, some places around Canyon City are kind of deserty. The area that you're mentioning, there's a cornfield and a tree line. Was it like kind of in the woods?
No, it's right by a road. There's a bunch of little farms around.
So it's kind of open?
Really hilly, rocky, hilly. The thing about Red Canyon Park is I was told that it used to be an Indian burial ground.
Huh.
Okay.
And you know how those usually are when legend and
Right.
myth, how magical and everything they could be.
Interesting. And so, do you think it was your grandfather, right? Or no, it was his friend?
Yes. Yes, I was with my grandparents. They raised me as a kid.
Who was the one that came out with the gun?
That was Mr. Persinger.
Do you think Mr. Persinger had seen it before? Is that why he was alarmed and tried to get you kids up?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Did he say anything to you when you got up to the house?
He didn't say anything up to me. My grandfather was standing there, and he kind of motioned me over to my grandmother. And I heard Mr. Persinger say something like, "It's the third time this year."
Oh, wow.
Oh.
Huh.
I think he liked the corn.
Yeah, I must have.
Like easy food, an easy food source.
But he seemed, it sounds like from your description, Terryll, that he was fearing for you kids and your safety with this thing right there.
Yeah.
And how long did the whole encounter kind of last?
In reality time, I would probably say 45 seconds to a minute at most.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so it was quick. But he came out of the house with the gun, so like you say, you'd have to assume he heard it grunt the first time and knew what it was.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite get that.
Since he came out of the house with the gun, he must have heard it and knew exactly what it was.
Yes. That's how I'm figuring it.
Yeah, interesting. When you went over to your grandmother, did she say, any of the adults say anything to you like, did you see that, or do you know what that was, or?
No, she didn't. She just said, "Let's just come in the house and we can play in there."
Okay, interesting.
Wow, I mean...
But the third time that year, that's...
I'm trying to get my head around it visually, because of the cornfield.
right.
I'm stuck in the agriculture part of it. So I know it's hilly, but is it kind of open where, could you see him take off, in the distance? Can you see him, walking away?
No. Once he got in the trees, I jumped down off the haystack and I took off.
So the cornfield was right at the edge of the tree line.
You can't see a whole lot.
Yeah.
There's a creek right there, not too far.
Okay, so there's water and a food source.
Yeah, there's water and a food source. I've heard of underground caves. I've never seen any, but I've heard of them.
What's interesting to me, Terryll, there's a couple of things. One, there's legends in the Native American tribes that Sasquatch would take children, kidnap children, and whatever. but I've heard numerous stories like yours where kids were playing near a house and they hear a noise and they look up and there's a Sasquatch just watching them, just like they're curious, but not making any move towards them or not showing any aggression. Obviously, if they wanted to take a kid, it would be very easy, but that doesn't ever seem to be in the stories I've heard. Like yours, it was just standing there watching you.
Yeah. I think it just wanted to eat in peace, and we were disturbing it.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Right. Would you, this was just a guess, what would you say as you look back at this? Was this an intelligent creature?
Oh, absolutely.
There,
you can tell there was thinking going on.
Yeah. So what do you think it was? I mean, what is a Sasquatch based on what you saw?
That has been in the back of my mind ever since that day. I'm very curious about them. It's not that I go out and search for them.
Right.
But I'm just so intrigued because I want to know, what are they really? I know I saw a Sasquatch.
Right.
I know it's not a man. I know it's not a bear. Is it from outer space? Is it from another dimension? Is it earthly? I would like to just say it's a relative of Gigantopithecus. But the more and more I read about these things, it seems like more people are saying it's from another dimension.
Okay.
And we have heard that a couple times on the podcast here. People have said, also they say when they see it, they also see UFOs. I don't want to say aliens, but
something like.
I've heard that too. And there have been sightings around the entire Canyon City, Florence area.
Yeah, I mean,
I've not seen one, but
yeah, we were just like, as you're saying, our previous guest was over in that area.
Well, he was down by Cripple Creek, which is a ways away from Canyon City, is it?
Sorry, I confused it because you mentioned Canyon City, that like you stand on the property and look that direction.
Right, look towards it, look down towards it is what he was saying. But in his encounter, he had a face to face like a foot away, and it was just him staring at this Sasquatch, staring back and forth, but no aggression towards him, even though he feared for his life. But I can tell as you tell the story, there's emotion for you. What is that emotion coming from?
What I'm feeling now, as telling you the story, is right now I still got goosebumps and tingling going up through my neck.
Uh-huh.
And people ask me, would I like to see another one? And part of me is like, yes. Part of me is like, no. But I do kind of would like to, just to be sure, so I can say, yes, that is what I saw. So I know that I'm not seeing things. So I know I'm not crazy.
Have you talked to any of those kids who are now adults about that event?
No.
Interesting. I wonder what they remember. If maybe you don't even have any way to reach out to them, but it would be interesting just from a detailed perspective to find out what they remember and what they saw. If they even saw it. The ones who were on the ground, maybe they didn't see it.
Maybe.
Do you remember a smell of any kind?
If there was, I can't tell you, because when I was 6 months old, I broke my nose and my sense of smell is gone.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
So interesting. So you wouldn't have known.
Right.
Yeah, that's just a question I've been asking just because it comes up sometimes. Some people say it's
right.
a stinky odor, and some people say there was no odor.
Yeah, I did not smell anything, and I don't know if the others smelled anything
Right.
either, but
Right.
Wow,
I've heard reports of that.
casting would have been an opportune time to cast something too, because it's
Sure.
in the soft.
The soft soil.
Yeah.
But you don't think about that when you're
Well, no.
13 years old.
Or when you have an encounter like that, and you don't
No,
know
you don't.
You don't know how to explain that, like what you saw. You know, like
Now, again, I'm going to ask you to guess here a little bit, Terryll, but looking back on the experience and how the Sasquatch behaved, if you had to say, yeah, I would say, because here's two main discussions within the Bigfoot community is they're a type of ape or they're more of a hominid. They're more human than they are ape. Which way would you guess looking back on that?
The face was definitely human.
Interesting.
The rest of it was ape.
Okay.
The head had that classic male gorilla crest on top.
Okay.
There was no neck. The shoulders just met the ears.
So really big, wide at the shoulders, I assume.
Oh, yeah. I'd say a good, just off the top of my mind, maybe 4 feet across.
Yeah. And muscular, could you tell if it was muscular?
Very muscular. The best way I can describe this, have you seen that Game of Thrones?
Yes.
You know the character called the Mountain?
I don't remember that character, but I've only
He
watched part of the first
He's
season.
like 6'9". He's a professional power lifter,
Okay.
but he's not built like a power lifter with the big belly. He's very broad in the shoulders and the chest, but he's thinner as he goes down.
Yeah. So more chiseled look.
Yeah, the shoulders were very. How can I say this? Not just broad, but thick from the side. Very, very thick.
Yeah.
From the back to the front of the chest was amazing.
The thickness of the chest itself.
Yeah. I wouldn't say it was ripped like a professional bodybuilder, but it had definite size.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's interesting, too, as you described it leaving and looking back at you and making a huff. That's almost a human expression, like, just leave me alone and I'll leave you alone.
Mm-hmm.
If I wanted to hurt you, I could have hurt you, but that's not my intent.
Yeah.
But that's what you felt. That's really that you distinctly had a feeling of what it was trying to say.
Yeah, he just turned and looked at me and kind of raised up his head a little bit and just went, woof,
Huh. Interesting.
and then turned and walked away.
Yeah. Well, one more encounter that was basically peaceful, although very dramatic for you guys because of what you saw and what it was. I find it interesting always in people's encounters who are with other people, particularly children. I've heard this numerous times that as they've grown up, they've never talked about that experience with the other children, now adults. Did you ever think about calling the girl who was with you on top of the haystack and saying,
I have not seen them since 1980.
okay. Huh. Because I have friends who saw them as a child with brothers or sisters, and only now, like 20 years later, when they start to doubt that ever happening, talk to their sister and say, do you remember such and such? And the sister's saying, oh yes, definitely. You're not imagining it. It did happen. But it sounds like you're sure it happened because you had so much detail in what you recounted.
I know what happened.
Yeah.
my mother died when she was very young and I was very young. And the biggest thing that bothers me is I cannot remember my mother's face unless I see a photo. But this thing is burned into my memory.
Wow. Wow, that's something. That's something. Because you were 14, you said.
Excuse me?
You were 14, you said, at the time?
Yeah, 13,
13,
14.
14. Yeah, that's old enough to remember things, but who knows but that there's something about a Sasquatch that they burn that into our minds somehow. But the fellow that we spoke to in a previous episode was 50 years ago, and he recounted in intimate detail what this thing looked like. So he's never forgotten. Anything else you want to tell us about that experience, Terryll? Or
I have a question.
sure, shoot.
Recently, for the last couple of years, people talk about these things can cloak.
Uh-huh.
And I've always wondered, if this thing was in the corn and it didn't want to be bothered, why did it show itself? Why didn't it just cloak and walk away? Why didn't Patty from the Patterson-Gimlin film, right out there in the open, just cloak and walk away?
Well, here's the thing about cloaking, and I've seen something that I think could have been cloaked in the woods, and I have people on my research team that have also seen something cloaked. The question is, what is cloaked? Because it's cloaked. You can't tell what it is. There's something there. Unless you see it and then see it cloak or see it come out of a cloak, it's impossible to say what that actually is. And so it could be a Sasquatch, it could be something else. But it's a great question. I suppose we'll never know the answer, but it would seem to me, Josh, I don't know if you have any thoughts, but it would seem to me that it wanted you to see it. That's why it stood there.
I mean, if it does have that ability too, right?
Yes,
like,
if it does.
It's some people that have said that, right? It's not like a fact.
It's not a fact. Nothing is a fact with Sasquatch.
But you guys do say you can follow the tracks and it disappears.
Correct.
So would that be part of the cloaking? Like, would that affect its weight?
It could be, but it sounds very much like this Sasquatch wanted you kids to see it for its own reasons, and then wanted to be left alone.
Because when I think cloaking, I think invisibility.
Right.
Right? Like, totally disappear.
Well, most people that talk about cloaking when it comes to Sasquatch are talking about a predator effect where you can see there's something there, but you see through it.
There it is again. Predator.
Yes, I know.
It comes up a lot when we talk about Bigfoot. It's very weird.
But I don't know if if that's helpful. But if they have this is the main question, Terryll. Do they have the ability to cloak, and can they do it at will? And if they can, yours obviously chose not to. For whatever reason. But I'm convinced more than ever that if we see a Sasquatch, they wanted us to see them, because they could easily remain hidden.
Right. Like I said earlier, I mean, I don't think it felt threatened by us since we were kids. You know, if it wanted to, it could have wiped us out.
Sure.
In seconds.
But also to think about that too, I mean, the aggression level, there was a gentleman standing on the porch with a gun.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it still didn't.
I've wondered about that. Was this Sasquatch wolfing at me, or was he wolfing at Mr. Persinger?
That's a good question.
Yeah, because if he was brandishing a weapon, yeah.
Well, and that it threw a corn cob at you. That's the funny thing too, is that it threw something at you. What was that all about? That was before it showed itself.
Right.
Was it just trying to chase you away? It's really interesting to me when they throw things.
And then, I was about to say that too. It's a reoccurring thing that
Yeah.
it's almost like it's trying to get your attention.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, the funny thing about the corn cob, there was a bite taken out of it.
So you actually looked at the corn cob later, or just noticed at the time there was a bite?
It was laying there next to Yvonne, and we're just looking at it, thinking, okay, what the heck is this?
Huh.
Where did it come from? Who threw it? I thought it was Billy.
Okay.
But then Yvonne grabbed my arm and said, "What's that?"
Interesting.
And then I looked up, and there it was.
If it had wanted to hit you, I'm pretty sure it could have hit you with it. It sounds like it didn't mean to hit you. It was just throwing
I don't
it
think
near
it
you.
meant to hit us.
Yeah.
Well, see, I
Just
mean, what
wanted our
other
attention.
what other reason would it be except for look at me?
Look at me. I'm
You know?
here.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Although it grunted before it threw the corn, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, he grunted twice.
Well, that's another good one.
This is a great story, and we are very, very appreciative of you sharing it with us, Terryll. It's one more recounting of behavior. See, as we get more and more stories, and by the way, we're building a new database that we're going to have linked to our website. I would love to add this story as one of the accounts in the database if you'd be up for that.
Oh, sure.
Because the more we hear, the more we can kind of build knowledge about what Sasquatch does and how they behave. And
That's also good too. I mean, maybe somebody hears your experience and wants to reach out
Sure.
to share theirs.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, hey, we really appreciate you joining us and sharing your story.
I
Yeah.
appreciate sharing it with you.
Thank you very much, and did a great job. I think everyone can imagine themselves in that situation and what it must have felt like. So thank you very much, Terryll. We're very appreciative.
Well, thank you, and it was totally my pleasure. And have a good evening.
Thank
Hey,
you very much.
thank you. You too. Wow, that was crazy. I mean,
It's
heard
good
of
thing, what do
children
you
in the
think here, huh?
children in the corn, but Sasquatch in the corn. That's even creepier.
Sasquatch in the corn, throwing corn at people.
Yeah, good thing it was corn and not like a rock
Well,
or
you
anything.
think, but you think a corn cob, if he actually wanted to hit you, that would hurt, man.
Well, yeah, it's got that little point to it too. It could propel somebody if Bigfoot through it.
So he takes a bite out of this cob of corn and then hucks it at the kids. That's really funny.
So he's either trying to get their attention or he just didn't dig the corn.
No,
because-
or he's like, man, I really want to eat, and you kids are bugging me, so get out of here. But never showed any aggression, even if you could call throwing corn at him aggression. I don't know, but
Man, the emotion that you could actually hear
yes,
in his voice
yes.
as he recounted. I mean, it does give a little, like, I don't... you see actors all the time on the screen. You see bad actors.
Right.
You know when people are reaching. It's really...
This was genuine.
it's just hearing real emotion in somebody's face. I don't know how you can kind of fake that to that point.
Well, and what's interesting to me too, as we close this episode, is that the man on the porch with the gun, this being the third time he'd seen him, it's interesting that he never took a shot at it. He could have. It was standing right there. He had a 30-06 reach out and touch somebody, but he didn't do that.
Yeah, my other thing is, like, he didn't, our guest didn't mention it, that it happened in his experience, but I'm not sure about the whole cloaking thing. Just coming from me,
Hey,
there's nothing that the closest thing in nature that I can think of is a chameleon, and that's not, like, cloaking,
well, listen, maybe one of our next episodes I'll share my story and another story from our research team about something that was cloaked, to give you an idea.
Okay.
So we'll keep that for a future episode. But hey, thanks for listening, everyone, and tuning in to hear another eyewitness account.
Yeah, and we cannot wait to have you guys back for our next episodes coming up. We're really excited about it. Some more Squatch the Box, some more guests.
And keep sending in your comments and your 5-star reviews, we hope.
Oh, and your questions. We'd love to have a little Q&A session again with you guys. That was great last time.
We're always open to questions that we can devote a whole episode to trying to answer.
So, keep suggesting us, and you can catch us on Facebook, YouTube, anywhere podcasts are, iTunes, and
everywhere.
Everywhere. Just say everywhere. You
just type in "You Don't Know Squatch" and it'll come up.
So, I guess that's it for this time.
And don't forget, Josh,
You don't know Squatch.